Good evening and welcome to another edition of Down to the Wire. I'm your host, derbyologist, and joining me again as co-host Candice here. Candice, this week we're going to go to Arlington Park, and this is traditionally what they call the preview day for the Arlington Million. We're going to take a look at the final four races and kind of help people out with their pick threes and pick fours and just take a look at the nice card they've got assembled, starting with the American Derby.
Yeah, this is our race for the 3-year-olds, kind of the prep for the Secretariat Stakes on Arlington Million Day. There's a couple intriguing horses. I thought one who was really interesting was Raagheb, coming here for Shadwell Stables, finished second to Commanding Curve last time out back in May. I'm a little surprised to see this horse coming now on the turf. I know he's, by Street Cry out of a Raagheb mare, but I didn't think he had really done much wrong in his races to this point, so I'm a little bit surprised at the surface switch, and to me maybe it shows that despite his breeding, perhaps they haven't quite shown him what they've really expected of him yet. So I would be a little bit hesitant, going and playing him in this sort of a spot. I think it's a little bit of a suspect surface switch to me. Nonetheless, comes here 1-2 back in an allowance race. Really was just outclassed in the American turf, but no Devisidero here, so that should be a little bit of a help for a horse who I expect to take some money in this spot. The other one who should take some money is World Approval, coming in from Cassie. Finished 4th in the Pennine Ridge, and I'm sure people will recognize all those names in front of him. Devisidero, Takeover Target, Startup Nation, 3 horses who took a lot of money last time out in the Belmont Derby. He was never beating any of those 3, and it was a little bit of a weird race in that he was much more forwardly placed than he has ever been, was World Approval. I think he's a horse who has some potential, but I don't expect him to be anywhere near as close to the pace this time around. And, even though he was only 1 3/4 lengths there behind in that spot, he's going to get a much, much different setup pace-wise than he got that time around. So I would be against him at a short price. For me, the one who I'm really looking at in this spot is King of New York. He won last time out at Churchill Downs, going a mile in the 16th. I think this mile and an 1/8 trip really is his trip, though. 2 back at Churchill. He finished 3rd to Granny's Kitten, who's a pretty decent horse in his own right. And really, I thought when I looked through the Trackist data for that race, he closed very strongly in that race. He finished, when you add up the times of the final 2 sectionals, he finished almost 4/10 faster than anybody else in the race. Obviously, Granny's Kitten wired them, so you would expect him to have been faster than that horse, but he was 7/10 faster than the 2nd place finisher and deaded, over a 2nd faster than the 4th place finisher, who came from well off the pace as well. So this is a horse who I really think relishes this mile and an 1/8 trip. He had some trouble in there, traveled almost 40 feet further than anybody else. So now, this time around, a little bit smaller field. If he can work out a trip, I think King of New York is a horse who really wants this distance and has some sneaky talent and a very nice turn of foot. I know it took him a while to kind of get things together. He was one of these horses who last year was taking a lot of money in these maiden special weight races and was kind of disappointing, going close but not quite there. But since he's broke his maiden, he really seems to have figured things out. So I'm going to take King of New York in this spot.
Yeah, with this race being a prep for the Secretariat and, being 9 furlongs on the turf, you've really got to determine, which of the horses can maybe improve on the turf at 9 furlongs. Normally I'm a firm believer that a horse can run an extra furlong on the turf than they can on the dirt. So if a horse is a good miler, I can play him at 9 furlongs on the turf. If they're what I really like it is when they're a 9 furlong horse on the dirt, then I can play him at 10 furlongs on the turf. I ended up going with Raagheb here. I think he's interesting just because he does have a little bit of the turf breeding on both sides of the pedigree. The owners they do pretty well at Arlington Park traditionally over the years. And that trainer, Daniel Pites, does good with kind of some long shots and 8-to-1s and 10-to-1s, and that's where I kind of see him in this range. I think this is the type of horse where, on paper, some people are just going to kind of overlook him, but I do like the fact that he did face Commanding Curve, not because that was the fastest race, but he did face older horses, and I just think inherently that's a little bit more classy than what some of these straight-up 3-year-olds are facing. You definitely can make the case for World Approval. He's faced, good solid horses every time. His one win was at Tampa Bay. He also had that nice maiden win at Gulfstream Park. I think he's going to be a little over bet in this spot, but he does get Jose Lezcano, and Mark Cassie's winning races. So in multi-races, you probably will want to use him, but I think he's beatable. So I'm going with Raagheb, and I just think I'd rather go to the wedding than go to the funeral next time if he does happen to win here or run really big at a price. And I think he's just kind of rounding into form, and I like the fact that he faced older horses the last time.
Yeah, well, I mean, another one we haven't mentioned, kind of a buddy of ours on the show, is Spire. Spike, I think definitely getting him back out to a mile and eighth will warrant some improvement. His best race to date was over that distance in the Spiral. He's very much kind of a closing, plodding type, but he is a horse who we know it's proven over this sort of a trip, and I think, will really improve for being stretched back out again in distance. I think ultimately, though, for me, this is a very competitive field. I don't think any one horse really stands out among the rest. So this is a race that if you see one horse, whether it's World Approval, probably most likely, who takes a lot of money, that's a horse who I'd be against, just because I don't think any one horse really stands out far and away better than any of the rest of these.
Yeah, I think ultimately Fire Spike is a better turfer than Dirter or even synthetic horse. So he's back to his best surface, and he's faced, this class level of quality, so he should be tough in a spot like this. The next race on the card is Arlington Handicap, and this race, there's a couple horses cross-entered, but I think we kind of know which horses are going to go here, and it should be a good solid race at a mile, just a little bit short of a mile and a quarter.
It is, and yeah, it's funny that we have some of these horses cross-enter, Dramedy, the Pizza Man, among others, but I think this race really revolves around a couple horses. One is Up with the Birds, a horse who seems to always go close and very rarely wins. I mean, when he wins, it's nice, but he just seems to very often run big races and just find one too good. Now, that being said, you can hardly go against his, recent form, being third behind Ironicus. He had a very much troubled trip there. Ironicus came back today and won, so has franked that form a little bit straight off the bat. I do think Up with the Birds is tough in this sort of a spot, but he is a horse who is going to take a lot of money in this sort of a spot as well, and a horse who can be a little bit tough to win with at times. So he would be one who, on your pick threes and pick fours, I think you have to use him. But as a win bet, I wouldn't play him to win. The one who I like here, I'm sure he'll take money being with Bill Mott, but I like Triple Threat in this spot. I was very impressed with his win in Group 2 at Monmouth last month. First time North America, I thought won that race pretty well despite having a little bit of a wide trip there. That was over a mile and an eighth. This horse is by Monsoon, should definitely want further. So I think Triple Threat is a horse who can be very dangerous in this sort of a level, and the trip I wouldn't be worried about in the slightest.
I thought the Pizza Man got a little bit of a trip set up the last time, so I'm kind of leaning against him, and I think the ultimate goal is the Arlington Million, so I think they're going to show a little bit more speed this time. If it takes them all around, I think they'll be happy with it. If it doesn't, I think they want to kind of get some of that speed back into them, because I think in the Arlington Million they want to be more forwardly placed. I got it down to two horses pretty quickly. Triple Threat was very impressive off the bench in his last race, first race of the year, and was just a few weeks ago. The big German breeding, he should love the distance. And he gets Lizcano to ride. Bill Mott trains, and he definitely improves with turfers. I think he's going to be tough to beat in this spot, but ultimately I went with Our Great Adventure. Definitely searching for a price here. I thought he ran well in that last race with Departing, had a very strong gallop out, and then two back ran credibly against the Pizza Man. I think he's just going to be way overlooked on the tote board, and I think he can make a 1, 2, 3 finish, and who knows, if everything falls into his lap. I do think he can kind of keep on plodding away and running, and I just think he may come running at a price in this spot. I'm assuming Dramedy goes to the 1.5 mile race. Another horse who I think has a shot maybe to pick up some pieces here is Quiet Force. He's ran in some competitive allowance races and does have a little bit of back class, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him kind of take some money on the board and really factor in the final top 4 placings.
Yeah, for me, this is a pretty chalky race. For my pick 4, I know I'll use Up with the Birds. I'll use Triple Threat. The other one who I'll use in this spot is Middleburg, who Triple Threat just beat last time out. He has that Lemon Drop kid. He's ran at 1 mile 7/16 and finished a very close third to Cozy Kitten and Tottenham, who are proven stayers. So can hardly, scoff at that form over these staying trips as well. I think he's another one who wants the distance. And one key thing with him and Triple Threat is that in their last race, when Triple Threat won by a nose, they were on equal weights, 116 pounds. Triple Threat gets the 4-pound penalty here, runs at 120, while Middleburg stays at 116. So only a nose separated them last time. So that would be something that I would definitely take into consideration with them when you look at the tote board on the day if Middleburg's a much bigger prize. So those are the three who I'll plan on using.
I'll put the birds, right now I just think he's off form. I know some people are going to take that he's got a class edge and he's a drop in class, but I just can't play a horse like that. He's lost too many races in a row. He really hasn't shown fire in his belly in over a year now. So he could win, but I think I think he also he may not be in form and it may not be a class drop anymore. So I think he's a risky horse to key too much on. I think you definitely, I'd rather take a stand against him than take the low price on him, and I really am dubious about his form at this current time. The Modesty Stakes, this one drew a pretty even field of female runners, and this one, of course, sometimes you get a couple of horses that end up going into the Beverly D race right before the Arlington Million.
We do. This is a race on paper that I see a fair bit of speed in here. Seeking Treasure likes to go forward. Honey Lake went forward in her last two. Let's see here. Lots of Lex, not on the lead, but she tends to go forward as well. Gaga went forward in her U.S. debut. Repose goes forward most of the time, kind of on the pace or pressing it. So it looks like there's a fair amount of speed here on paper. Whether or not that formalizes, we'll find out. I think I think Gaga is a horse who's going to take a fair bit of money, having won in her U.S. debut. It was nice. I don't think that it was anything that blew me away, but you'd expect her to improve off of that sort of an effort in this spot. The other one who I'd expect to take a lot of money is Mango Diva. She lost last time out in her U.S. debut, but everybody's kind of been all over that she was squeezed at the start and she was wide. I think you have to draw a line through that race, but I don't think that automatically makes her a favorite in this spot either. For me, the horse I'm going to go with is Overheard. She's strung a couple nice races together now. In her debut this season, she finished 4th, 2 lengths behind Kitten's Queen, but Kitten's Queen has kind of run pretty well since then as well and wasn't too far back over what was some pretty soft ground there that I don't think she really took to. Improved off that effort last time, the Nassau, being 1 length behind Sky Treasure. She did lead for a point there and then was passed, but I did think that was a nice effort, just second time off the bench, off of a pretty long layoff actually. This is a barn who's been doing well. I think she can kind of work out a trip here. She tends to be off the pace, but not too far back. So I think she's a horse who, if it kind of falls out apart in front of her, which I wouldn't be surprised if it does, then she's going to be one who can really pick up the pieces. And she's a very consistent horse. She's run 16 races to date, and she's won 5 of them, and all of them but 1, she's finished in the money. So a horse who kind of always is pretty honest and gives her a race every time.
This race had a hard time projecting the pace. A few of them ran up on the pace or close to the lead the last time, but I don't think necessarily they're those type of running styles normally. I ended up going with Gaga, however you want to pronounce it, but this is a type of race that, Drysdale won, I think, off the layoff, and this horse could improve off that. I like the form lines over from some previous races. I do think this horse is going to lay more back. I just think it was kind of forced closer to the pace the last time and kind of outclassed some of those fillies. But I really could have made it after her. I could have seen 4 or 5 races. So this is probably the pick that I'm the least confident in. But I do think if she does do well, I think she's going to kind of lay back and make one run. And I think with Drysdale, there's a little bit of upside from that comeback race.
There is. I think for me, I do get a little bit worried sometimes taking that Santa Anita form out east a little bit. What do you think about the cutback and trip here? Are you worried about that at all?
No, I think that may actually help her. I think, the last time I didn't really notice a turn of foot and the gallop ball wasn't that great, but a lot of times Drysdale usually has his horses pretty fit off the layoff. So I'm thinking that actually the cutback, I think, could actually help its speed. And like I say, I think if they can get more into a cover type trip and then swing out and then, try to make it a quarter-mile race. And I think really that's more her running style.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how she does in this sort of a spot and how much money she takes having that win with some of the bigger names here.
She was a decent price the last time, so I don't think she'll be like a 6-5 type shot. And a lot of times those California, it's tough to back these California horses when they're not in California. So,
Yes.
and that's starting to get pretty well known now. So some of the odds are starting to get factored into that. I think, for people that don't know, it's
Mhm.
the last few years, a lot of the California shippers, when they ship outside of California on the turf, they're not performing well. And I'm not sure if it's the turf courses. I'm not sure if it's just the lack of deep turf field quality, like Gulfstream and Arlington and Churchill and Keeneland have these deep quality fields. And Santa Anita, I think their top level talent is just as good. I just think when Santa Anita or Hollywood and places like that have had a 9, 10, 11 horse field the last year and a half, really the field has been top heavy. But it's been noticeable, and I think we're starting to see it on the odds board. Even a horse like Ashley Loves Sugar last week went off at almost 6-1. And 2 years ago, I think a horse like that would have went off at 4-1, 7-2.
Yeah, this race is really interesting because I think this mile and 3/16 distance makes it, where we have some horses cutting back from the mile and a half, we have some horses stretching out from a mile, so makes it a little bit of a tricky race to project. But I do think that there's some quality here and that this is a very competitive race. Another one, I think that's really kind of the key that makes this sequence very bettable, and one that I think will be lucrative if you hit it, is that in any of these races, there is not one horse that you can say, oh, this is the sure thing. This horse is way better than everyone in this field. They're all very competitive spots.
Eighth race is the Stars and Stripes. I handicapped this race as the Pizza Man is going to scratch. And this is the race that I think Dramedy and the other horse is going to stay in here, Yankee Dealer. So I ended up with a couple of horses. I'm kind of intrigued a little bit at 1.5 miles by Calvados, the Argentinian horse going back to the turf here and kind of loves the distance. But ultimately, I decided to go with Extra Luck. I just really like the form he's in right now. And I think he's beaten some deep fields the last couple of races, but it is tough at 1.5 miles. He's going to need a good trip, and pace will ultimately dictate the race. And we saw Dramedy pull off the upset the last time at long odds.
We did, and I agree with you. Extra Luck is the one to beat in this spot. He does, come here in very great form. I know he won last time out at Churchill. The race before that he lost to, I think it was a very well-met Innovation Economy, won before that. So he's a horse who's ran its, strung several good races in a row now, and I think he's one who we know certainly wants this sort of a trip. For me, I ended up going with Afortable. He comes in here first time gelding. This is his first time stretching out quite to this distance, but I thought one of his better races to date was in the American Derby last year at 1 mile and 3/16. He ended up running in there behind Divine Oath and Our Channel. Had a little bit of a tough trip, but he's a horse who just time and time again keeps getting drawn wide, 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 wide. And he keeps having these wide trips and ends up getting beat in these spots, but I do think he's a horse who could perhaps appreciate the stretch out here. Comes now second start off of the layoff, second start of the year will make that. Like I said, first time gelding, and for connections that obviously do very, very well here at Arlington Park. So I'm going to take a bit of a swing with Afortable here. I do agree, though, that you have to use Extra Luck.
What about Dramedy? If you look closer at this horse's record, he's 3 for 10 on the turf with 2 seconds. And obviously, looking back, I think they kind of prepped him. The last time he had the element of surprise, nobody really truly believed he was going to keep on running. But he does seem to be in better form. So it's kind of one of those things where you got to weigh, last time he went off at the long odds, nobody took him seriously. He got the easy lead, but now he may be in better form, and he takes, he's not going up in class, and
No.
maybe I have a feeling people might overlook him again, and he could be 8 or 9-1, and actually, like I say, he's 5 for 10 in the top 2 on the turf.
Yeah, and he obviously loves his distance. This is the one time he's been stretched out this far, and he won. And, if anything, I think this maybe is a little bit of a class drop. He went against Dynamic Sky, Unitarian, kind of that. I mean, I know it was a grade 2 race, but it was kind of that group that if we had a grade 1.5 mile race, those are the horses who you'd expect to be in there. So it was kind of a grade 2 in name only, I guess I would say. It was really against the top horses at this distance. Whether or not he'll be let go again, I'm not so sure. I think Extra Luck is a horse who will kind of be up there and keep him honest to make sure that, they don't let what happened last time happen again. But I do agree he does seem to be in better form even before that race, finishing 4th behind War Correspondent over a mile at Gulfstream. mean, that's not his trip, so that's, a pretty good result there as well. Won at Tampa earlier this year, so, he is a horse who I think he can be a little bit hit or miss, but he seems to be rounding into a good cycle around this time. I don't know if he'll get the same trip, but, if he's a horse who is above 5, 6 to 1, which I think he could easily be, then you have to take a serious look at him.
That race, of course, at a mile and a half and sets it up for a possibility of a couple of horses maybe going into the St. Leger on Million Day. Everybody loves the Pizza Man headlines. What are the chances that the Pizza Man decides to run in both races?
That'd be crazy. I guess if anybody would do it, it'd be the Pizza Man.
I was going to say the Pizza Man likes to deliver. And if anybody could run both races on this card, I think the Pizza Man would be the one. So
it would be fitting for him to do that in Chicago.
Yep, deep dish. So now, do you think any of these horses are, and not even the winners or who we're picking, just by looking at, especially let's focus in on the Arlington Million and the Beverly D, are any of the horses in either of the two preps for those two races capable of winning the Million or the Beverly D, or do you think the horses that ship in on race day for that one are going to have a little bit of a class edge?
I really think the horses who are going to be shipping in are going to have a class edge on both. You and I kind of talked about it just before we started filming here, but the purses of these races has a little bit dictated the fields. I think we have a lot more local horses here, and the horses shipping in are ones who are just a little bit of a cut below, I think, than what we're used to seeing in these sorts of spots. The Beverly D, obviously, they're going to have issues because they're going to have Lady Eli coming there, I would think, because that's a weight for age race. She'd only have to carry 117 pounds. That makes her extremely dangerous in that sort of a spot. So her alone, I think, makes the horses who are running in the prep this weekend a cut below. She's clearly the best in her division at this point in time. As far as the Million goes, it's going to be interesting. We don't really know what's gone on back in California with Balal Bali after disappointing last time. I think he had some physical issues, so we don't know if he's still going to the Million. I do think we'll get Candice Chase coming out from Europe, who is a very nice horse for Sir Michael Stout, so he would be one who I would keep an eye on as well. But really, it's a division that's a little bit wide open. I mean, obviously we know California Chrome is going to go there, but it's a race that nobody really, is dominating at this point. So we'll see. I hope we get a bigger field than last year. That's probably more my hope than anything. No more like 6 horses.
Have we heard anything about Hardest Core? Is he thinking about coming back?
I don't know. I think he was entered to run this week, and then they decided not to run him. So I don't really know what's going on, but I wouldn't consider that a good sign. I mean, who knows? Wicked Strong is running this weekend over the turf, only a mile. But, I mean, who knows? If you're going to put a horse like him on the turf, maybe you might supplement into one of these races as well.
Yeah, I think, besides California Chrome, it'd be nice to, Bali is still working out. I think the plan is still for him to go. You add in the Sir Michael Stout horse, and then you get, some of the suspects from the Monmouth race last week, and I think the plan right now is Slumber possibly to go.
Him going, and Legendary is going to go, who I think is going to end up being very tough in that spot. He's a horse who I think when he ran last time out, I mean, he had Million written all over him.
And definitely, I think if the Pizza Man runs well, he'll come back and he'll be on that card or race. So should be a good prep, and yet, still some good horses shipping in for the big day. Next week, we'll take a look at, I believe, the Indiana Derby, possibly the Indiana Oaks. There's a few other stakes races, and that's going to do it for another edition of Down to the Wire.